The desert sun hung low over Nellis Air Force Base, painting the Nevada horizon in shades of burnt orange and gold. Dust swirled lazily across the tarmac, carried by a warm breeze that smelled of jet fuel and sagebrush. Inside the base's mess hall, the clatter of pots and the hum of voices filled the air. Amert wiped sweat from her brow, her hands moving with practiced ease as she scrubbed a stack of trays. The kitchen was her domain, a place where she was just kitchen staff, a title that clung to her like grease on a skillet. But Amert was more than that. She always had been. At 26, Amert was a quiet woman with sharp brown eyes and calloused hands that told stories she didn't share. Her dark hair was pulled into a tight bun, tucked under a hairnet, and her uniform was stained with the day's work. A gravy splattered across her apron, a smudge of flour on her cheek. To the pilots and officers who passed through the mess hall, she was invisible, just another face serving mashed potatoes and coffee. They didn't know about the hours she spent studying flight manuals in her bunk, the dog-eared pages filled with notes in her neat handwriting. They didn't know about the simulator sessions she snuck in at midnight, her fingers dancing over controls she wasn't supposed to touch. Amert had dreams that soared higher than the jets overhead, but dreams didn't pay the bills, and the Air Force didn't hand out wings to kitchen workers. The problem started on a Tuesday, when the base was buzzing with tension. A critical mission was scheduled, a high-stakes reconnaissance flight over contested airspace. The F-22 Raptor, a sleek beast of a fighter jet, was the only machine capable of pulling it off. But there was a catch. The mission required a pilot with instincts sharp enough to navigate a maze of enemy radar and anti-aircraft systems. One by one, the top pilots had tried the simulator runs. One by one, they'd failed. The mission was too precise, too unforgiving. The base commander, Colonel Hargrove, was running out of options, and the clock was ticking. Amert heard the whispers while she ladled soup into bowls. Pilots sat at the tables, their voices low but not low enough. "No one can thread that needle," one said, shaking his head. "Too many variables. You'd need a miracle." Another pilot, a cocky lieutenant named Dawson, snorted. "Or a computer for a brain." Amert kept her head down, her hands steady, but her heart raced. She'd run the exact scenario in the simulator 2 weeks ago, alone in the dark, when the training room was empty. She'd nailed Ida every turn, every evasion, every split-second decision. But who would believe her? She was just the kitchen girl. That night, Amert lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling. The barracks were quiet, save for the distant rumble of a jet taking off. She thought about her father, a mechanic who'd worked on F-4 Phantoms back in the day. He'd taught her to love planes, to see them as more than metal and rivets. "They're alive," he'd said, his hands black with oil. "You just gotta listen to AM." Amert had listened. She'd studied. She'd practiced. But the world didn't care about a dreamer with no rank or title. She closed her eyes, the weight of it all pressing against her chest. The next morning, the mess hall was busier than usual. Officers moved quickly, their faces tight with worry. Amert overheard Colonel Hargrove talking to his second-in-command, Major Ruiz, as they grabbed coffee. "We're out of pilots," Hargrove said, his voice gruff. "If we don't find someone by tomorrow, we scrub the mission." "That's not an option," Ruiz shook his head. "No one's left, sir, unless you want to pull a miracle out of thin air." Amert's hands froze over a tray of biscuits. Her pulse thrummed in her ears. This was her chance, maybe her only one. She wiped her hands on her apron, took a deep breath, and approached the officers. "Sir," she said, her voice steady but soft, "I can fly it." Hargrove turned, his bushy eyebrows raised. Ruiz blinked, like he wasn't sure he'd heard her right. "You?" Hargrove said, looking her up and down. "Your kitchen staff." "Yes, sir," Amert said. "But I've trained, I've run the sims, I know the F-22, and I've beaten that mission profile." Her words hung in the air, fragile but firm. The mess hall seemed to grow quieter, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Hargrove's eyes narrowed. "This isn't a game, kid. You're telling me you can fly a $50 million jet better than my best pilots?" "I'm saying I can try," Amert replied. "If you're out of options, what's the harm?" Ruiz looked at Hargrove, uncertain. The colonel rubbed his jaw, then let out a heavy sigh. "Fine, You get one shot in the simulator, blow it, and you're back to peeling potatoes, understood? Amrit nodded, her heart pounding. Yes, sir. The simulator room was a sterile space, all screens and switches, lit by the cold glow of monitors. A handful of pilots had gathered, some curious, others smirking. Dawson leaned against a wall, arms crossed. This ought to be good, he muttered. Amrit ignored him. She climbed into the cockpit, her hands steady despite the eyes on her. The simulator hummed to life, and the mission began. The screen showed a digital sky, enemy radar pinging like predators in the dark. Amrit's fingers moved with quiet precision, guiding the virtual F-22 through narrow corridors of safety. She banked left, then right, dodging threats with a calm that surprised even her. The simulator threw everything at her, jamming signals, missile locks, terrain hazards, but Amrit stayed focused. She listened to the jet, just like her father had taught her. Every beep, every vibration, was a conversation. She spoke back with her hands, her instincts, her heart. When the screen flashed mission complete, the room was silent. Amrit exhaled, her shoulders relaxing. Hargrove stared at the data, his face unreadable. Dawson's smirk was gone. Run it again, Hargrove said. Amrit did. She nailed it again, and again. By the third run, Hargrove was pacing. How the hell did you learn this? He asked. Books, sims, time. Amrit said simply. I've been preparing for years. Hargrove studied her, then nodded. You're flying the mission tomorrow. 0600. The news spread like wildfire. By dinner, the mess hall was abuzz. Kitchen girls flying an F-22? One pilot whispered. No way, another said. Amrit kept her head down, serving food like always. But inside, she was soaring. Dawn broke over the desert, the sky a soft pink. Amrit stood on the tarmac, her flight suit crisp and unfamiliar. The F-22 loomed before her, its sleek lines gleaming in the early light. She ran her hand along its wing, feeling the cool metal. We got this, she whispered. The cockpit was a world of its own, screens glowing, switches clicking, the faint hum of systems coming alive. Amrit trapped in, her hands steady but her heart racing. The ground crew gave her a thumbs up, and Hargrove's voice crackled over the radio. You sure about this, Amrit? Positive, sir, she said. The jet roared to life, the thrust pinning her to the seat as she climbed into the sky. The desert fell away, replaced by a vast blue expanse. Amrit's world narrowed to the mission, radar signals, waypoints, threats. She flew with the same calm precision she'd shown in the simulator, her hands light on the controls. The enemy airspace was a gauntlet, but Amrit moved like she was born for it. She dodged, she weaved, she listened. The jet responded like an extension of herself. Hours later, she touched down at Nellis, the mission data secure in the jet's systems. The tarmac was crowded of pilots, ground crew, even Hargrove, waiting. Amrit climbed out, her legs shaky but her head high. The crowd was quiet, then someone clapped. Another joined in. Soon, the air was filled with applause. Hargrove approached, his face softer than she'd ever seen it. You did it, he said. Clean run. Perfect? Amrit nodded, her throat tight. Thank you, sir. Why didn't you tell anyone? He asked. All this time, you could have been flying. She shrugged, a small smile tugging at her lips. No one asked. That evening, the mess hall was different. Pilots looked at her not as kitchen staff, but as one of them. Dawson even mumbled an apology, his face red. Amrit served dinner, same as always, but the weight on her chest was gone. She'd flown, she'd proven herself, and she knew this was just the beginning. In the weeks that followed, Amrit's life changed. Hargrove pushed her paperwork through, fast-tracking her to flight school. She traded her apron for a pilot's wings, her days now filled with briefings and training hops. But she never forgot the kitchen. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, she'd slip back into the mess hall, helping with dishes or stirring a pot of stew. The other cooks would laugh, calling her Captain Spatula. She'd smile, knowing she was both the girl who served meals and the woman who flew missions no one else could. As the sun set over Nellis one evening, Amrit stood on the tarmac, watching an F-22 climb into the sky. The roar filled her chest, and she felt her father's words again. They're alive. You just gotta listen. She had listened. And now, the sky was hers.